The hum of Prometheus 7 was a sound Aaron Cole felt in his teeth before he heard it with his ears. It was a low, grinding vibration, the tectonic groan of millions of tons of metal orbiting a volatile volcanic planet. It was the sound of poverty of old air recyclers, wheezing to keep 20,000 souls breathing, and of gravity generators that shuddered every time the power grid hiccuped. Aaron lay on the folding cot, his spine registering the metal bar that dug into his lower back. He kept his eyes closed for a moment longer, trying to salvage the last fragments of sleep. He was almost 40, though the mirror insisted he looked 50, and his body felt closer to 60. 20 years of military service and 5 years of freelance maintenance work on the Ashfall Rim had left him with a collection of scars that served as a roadmap of bad decisions and worse luck. He inhaled sharply. Something was wrong. The air in Module 4B usually smelled of ozone-burnt lubricants, and the faint, sweet rot of hydroponic algae from the ventilation shafts. Today, it smelled rich. It smelled earthy and dark. It smelled like real coffee. Aaron's eyes snapped open. He did not move. His body went rigid, the old instincts of a siege engineer flooding his nervous system with adrenaline. He was not a soldier anymore, but the war never really left you. It just waited for you to drop your guard. He was a father now, and that made him twice as dangerous. He rolled off the cot silent as a shadow despite his size. He was a big man built like a blast wall with calloused hands that could crush a windpipe or calibrate microlens with equal proficiency. He grabbed the heavy wrench he kept under his pillow. It was a 20mm spanner made of high-density alloy, heavy enough to crack a bulkhead. He glanced at the bedroom door. It was closed. Nora was safe inside. She had the only real bed in the apartment, a luxury he had paid 3 months of wages to secure. As long as that door was closed, the universe was manageable. He crept toward the kitchenette, his bare feet making no sound on the cold metal deck. The light in the main living area was dim, the station cycles set to simulated dawn. Someone was humming. Aaron rounded the corner. The wrench raised his muscles coiled to strike. Then he froze. Standing by the small, stained counter was a woman. Or rather, she was mostly a woman. She had the silhouette of a human female, tall and lithe, but her skin was covered in a coat of fine, shimmering silver fur. 2 triangular ears, twitching independently, sat atop a mane of hair that cascaded down her back like liquid mercury. A long, bushy tail swayed rhythmically behind her, brushing against the cabinet doors with a soft swish-swish sound. She was a Vulpari, and she was wearing his shirt. It was his old service shirt, a faded gray garment from his time in the Terran Engineering Corps. The sleeves were rolled up past her elbows, and the hem reached down to her mid-thighs, leaving her silver-furred legs bare. She turned, as if she had known he was there the entire time. Her eyes were amber, slit-pupiled, and glowing with a faint bioluminescence. She held a steaming mug of coffee in one clawed hand. "Good morning, Aaron," she said. Her voice was like velvet dragged over gravel smooth, but with a dangerous texture. "I hope you do not mind. I found a stash of Arabica beans in your emergency kit. It seemed like a crime to let them go stale." Aaron lowered the wrench slowly, though he did not loosen his grip. His brain was misfiring, trying to reconcile the threat assessment with the domestic absurdity of the scene. "Who are you?" Aaron rasped. His voice was thick with sleep. "And why are you wearing my shirt?" The Vulpari woman took a sip of the coffee, her eyes closing in pleasure. "My name is Sarah Nightwind. As for the shirt, my flight suit was ruined. I assumed you would prefer I wear this rather than nothing at all, though I admit the fabric is rather coarse." Before Aaron could process a response, the bedroom door creaked open. He spun around instinctively, stepping between the stranger and the door. Nora stood there rubbing her eyes. Her hair was a bird's nest of brown tangles, and she was clutching a stuffed rabbit that had lost an ear 3 years ago. She was 8 years old, small for her age, but she possessed a gaze that could dissect a lie from 100 paces. Nora looked at Aaron. Then she looked past him to the silver-furred woman leaning against the counter. Nora blinked. "Daddy," she said, her voice calm and terrifyingly inquisitive. "Why is there a fox lady in your shirt?" Aaron looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Nora and smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too sharp for a human comfort zone. "That," Sarah said, "is an excellent question." The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, which was exactly how Aaron liked it. He sat at the small, wobbly table, watching Sarah Nightwind finish her second cup. Nora sat opposite her, mesmerized, watching the Vulpari's ear twitch every time the station's hydraulic pumps thumped in the distance. "So," Aaron said, rubbing his temples, "you are telling me I do not remember anything." "Trauma-induced amnesia is common after rapid decompression," Sarah said matter-of-factly. "You hit your head on the ejection handle. Quite hard, actually." "I don't get amnesia," Aaron grunted. "I have a thick skull." "Evidently," Sarah replied. She traced the rim of the mug with a long black claw. "You also have a very singular definition of maintenance work, Mr. Cole. Most mechanics do not intercept Category 5 plasma storms to play tug-of-war with diplomatic shuttles." The words unlocked something in Aaron's brain. Category 5. The headache spiked, a sudden blinding flare of pain behind his eyes. The smell of the coffee vanished, replaced by the stench of burning insulation and the metallic taste of fear. 3 nights ago. The memory slammed into him with the force of a freight train. He was not in the kitchen. He was in the cockpit of Pod 39, a rust bucket maintenance vessel that was barely glorified space debris. The universe outside the viewport was screaming. A solar flare from the volcanic planet below had whipped the magnetosphere into a frenzy, creating a plasma storm that turned the void into a kaleidoscope of violent violet and angry red. The sensors were screaming. "Warning. Shield integrity at 15%. Warning." Aaron was fighting the controls, sweat stinging his eyes. "Come on, you piece of junk," he roared, wrestling the yoke. "Hold together." He was supposed to be fixing a relay on the outer ring of Prometheus 7. It was a suicide job, but the payout was 2,000 credits, enough to pay the rent on the module for 6 months and maybe buy Nora a new pair of boots that actually fit. Then he saw it. It was a sleek vessel, shaped like a teardrop, gleaming with the iridescent hull plating of the Vulpari Dominion. It was caught in a grav shear, spinning uncontrollably toward the station's primary support struts. If that ship hit the struts, it would not just kill whoever was inside. It would compromise the structural integrity of Sector 4, the sector where the worker habitats were, the sector where Nora was sleeping. "Traffic control, this is Pod 39, Aaron shouted into the comms. "You have a collision imminent, Vector 229. Static was his only answer. The storm had scrambled the comms. The Vulpari ship was tumbling. It was going to impact in 30 seconds. Aaron did not think. He did not weigh the pros and cons. He did not consider that he was a single father with everything to lose. He just saw the trajectory, and he saw the death of his daughter in math. He slammed the throttle forward. The maintenance pod groaned, its engine whining in protest. Aaron fired the retro thrusters, putting his tiny craft directly into the path of the spinning yacht. "Deploying mag grapples," he yelled to no one. He punched the release. 2 heavy magnetic cables shot out from the pod's belly, slamming onto the Vulpari hull with a reverberating clang. The line went taut. The G-force hit Aaron like a physical blow. His vision grayed out. The pod was not designed for towing. It was designed for welding. The frame shrieked as the momentum of the diplomatic yacht tried to tear his ship in half. He needed to alter the yacht's vector by 3 degrees. Just 3 degrees. "Turn." Aaron gritted his teeth so hard he felt a molar crack. "Turn, damn you!" He fired his maneuvering thrusters until the fuel gauge flashed 0. The pod shuddered violently. The hull breach warnings lit up the dashboard like a Christmas tree. Hull integrity critical. Ejection recommended. He held on for 1 more second, then another. He saw the yacht swing clear of the station struts, missing the metal framework by less than 10 meters. It skidded into the open docking bay of the derelict cargo sector. "Gotcha," Aaron whispered. Then his own pod disintegrated. The starboard engine exploded, tearing the back half of the maintenance craft away. The cockpit spun into the void. Aaron's hand found the manual eject lever. He pulled. Explosive bolts blew the canopy. The rocket under his seat fired, kicking him out into the vacuum, just as the rest of Pod 39 turned into a fireball. He tumbled through the zero-gravity chaos, the storm, raging around him like a living thing. His suit sealed the internal oxygen hissing. He slammed into the decking of the open cargo bay, rolling sliding until his boots found purchase on the maglock strips. He was alive. He checked his limbs. Attached. He looked up. The Vulpari yacht had crashed at the far end of the bay, its nose crumpled like an accordion. Aaron could have walked away. He had saved the station. He had saved Nora. His job was done. But he stood up. He limped toward the smoking wreck. He used his laser cutter to slice through the jammed airlock of the yacht. Smoke billowed out, acrid and purple. He climbed inside, navigating the tilted corridor, until he found the cockpit. The pilot was dead. A Vulpari male slumped over the console. But in the passenger seat, strapped into a crash harness, was a female. She was unconscious, a gash on her forehead bleeding silver fluid that shimmered in the emergency lights. She was beautiful, in an alien, terrifying way. "Okay, Your Highness," Aaron muttered, unbuckling her straps. "Let's get you out of here." He hauled her over his shoulder. She was lighter than a human, her bone structure avian and hollow. He carried her out of the ship, across the docking bay, and into the maintenance corridors. The elevators were down due to the storm. The medbay was 40 levels up. He could not take her there. So he took her home. The memory faded, leaving Aaron breathing hard in his kitchen. He looked at his hands. They were shaking slightly. "You carried me 12 levels down the service ladder," Sarah said softly. She was watching him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You treated my head wound with antiseptic meant for industrial machinery. You gave me your bed and you slept on a chair with a wrench in your lap." "It was a folding cot," Aaron corrected, his voice gruff. "And the antiseptic is universal. If it cleans a fuel injector, it cleans a cut." Nora giggled. She was eating a bowl of rehydrated oat mash, but she was ignoring the food to stare at Sarah's tail. "Is it real?" Nora asked, pointing a spoon at the tail. "Nora," Aaron warned. "Manners," Sarah smiled. She swished the tail, brushing the tip against Nora's nose. The little girl squealed in delight. "It is very real, little one. It helps me balance when I run, and it keeps me warm on cold nights." "Are you a princess?" Nora asked. "I am a diplomat," Sarah corrected, though her tone suggested the difference was negligible. "My family, the Nightwinds, serve on the High Council of the Vulpari Dominion. We negotiate peace trade, and occasionally the boundaries of war." Aaron leaned back in his chair, the metal legs scraping against the floor. The reality of the situation was settling in, like a heavy stone in his gut. "Look, Miss Nightwind," Aaron said. "I am glad you are okay, but you need to go. If the station security finds a Vulpari diplomat in the worker slums, they are going to ask questions I cannot answer. People around here disappear when we get involved with highborn business." "I agree," Sarah said. She set the coffee mug down. "My security detail is likely tearing the station apart looking for me. The distress beacon on my shuttle was damaged, but they will track my subdermal implant eventually." "Good," Aaron said. "So you can go." Sarah stood up. She moved with a fluid grace that made Aaron feel clumsy and hulking. She walked over to him, standing so close he could smell the scent of her, like rain on hot stone and ozone. "I will go," Sarah said. "But there is a matter we must discuss first." "What matters?" Aaron stood up, crossing his arms. He wanted her out. He wanted his boring, miserable, safe life back. Sarah looked him in the eye. She was shorter than him, but she held herself with such authority that she seemed to tower over the room. You saved my life, Aaron Cole. You risked your own existence to alter the trajectory of my vessel. You pulled me from the wreckage. You brought me into your home and guarded me while I was vulnerable. I did what anyone would do, Aaron said, looking away. No, Sarah said sharply. You did what no one else did. 3 other ships passed me by. Traffic control ignored my distress call. You acted. She reached out and took his hand. Her palm was warm, her pads rough like leather. Her claws retracted slightly, a gesture of non-aggression. In my culture among the Vulpari, a debt of life is not a transaction, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried the weight of centuries of tradition. It is not something you pay off with credits or a thank you note. Aaron tried to pull his hand away, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Lady, I don't want a reward, Aaron said. I did it because my kid was sleeping in the sector you were about to vaporize. Don't make it weird. It is already weird, Daddy, Nora piped up from the table. She's holding your hand. Sarah ignored the child, her golden eyes locking onto Aaron's. The bioluminescence in her irises pulsed in a slow rhythm. By our people's custom, Sarah said, measuring every syllable. When you save a diplomat's life in the manner you did, sacrificing your own vessel, shedding your own blood, it creates a binding implication. Aaron felt a cold chill run down his spine. It was the same feeling he used to get right before an ambush. What kind of implication? Aaron asked slowly. Sarah leaned in, her voice husky. We are now bonded. By the laws of the Nightwind clan, you are no longer just a stranger. You are connected to my fate. Bonded, Aaron repeated. Like a contract, deeper, Sarah said. A mischievous glint flickered in her eyes, contrasting with the gravity of her words. Think of it less like a contract and more like a gravitational orbit. You are stuck with me, Aaron Cole. And I am stuck with you. Aaron stared at her. He looked at his faded shirt stretching over her shoulders. He looked at his daughter, who was grinning like she had just won the lottery. He looked at the rusted walls of his tiny apartment. I am a mechanic, Aaron said flatly. I fix air filters. I don't do destiny or bonding or whatever alien voodoo this is. That is unfortunate, Sarah said, releasing his hand and smoothing down the front of the shirt. Because my security team just arrived outside your door, and unless you want them to arrest you for kidnapping a high-ranking diplomat, I suggest you play along with the bond. As if on cue, a heavy pounding echoed from the metal door of the module. Boom, boom, boom. Open up, a mechanical voice boomed from the corridor. Station security. We have signatures of unauthorized biologicals inside. Aaron looked at the door. Then, he looked back at the foxwoman. Sarah offered him a dazzling, terrifying smile. Shall we introduce them to your new status partner? She asked. Aaron groaned, rubbing his face with his massive hand. He looked at Nora. Nora, he said, his voice weary. Go into your room and put on your noise-canceling headphones. But Daddy... Now, Peanut. Nora grabbed her rabbit and scrambled into her room, shutting the door. Aaron turned back to Sarah. He picked up his wrench again. Not to use it, just to have something solid to hold on to as his world started to spin off its axis. If we get out of this, Aaron muttered, I am charging you for the coffee. Sarah laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Deal. She walked toward the door, her tail held high, radiating a regal confidence that made the cramped apartment feel like a throne room. Aaron followed her, his heart hammering a rhythm he hadn't felt since the war. He had survived the plasma storm. He had survived the crash. But looking at the silver-furred woman in his shirt, Aaron had a sinking feeling that the real storm was just beginning. The metal door of Module 4B vibrated with the heavy, authoritative pounding of the station security team. But inside the cramped living space, the atmosphere had shifted from panic to a strange, suspended calm. Sarah Nightwind, the Vulpari diplomat wearing Aaron's faded service shirt, did not flinch. She simply finished her coffee, placed the mug gently in the sink, and walked to the door with the poise of a queen approaching a podium. She opened the door. Aaron stood back, one hand still resting near the heavy wrench on the counter, his body shielding Nora. He expected shouting. He expected blasters drawn. He expected to be on his knees with zip cuffs biting into his wrists within 10 seconds. Instead, he heard a sharp intake of breath from the corridor. Mistress Nightwind," a voice stammered. It was not the mechanical voice from earlier, but a human officer, sounding terrified. "Officer," Sarah said. Her voice had changed. It was no longer the husky, playful tone she had used in the kitchen. It was cold, clear, and carried the weight of orbital bombardment. "I apologize for the lack of communication. My transponder was damaged in the storm. This citizen provided me with emergency shelter when the medical bays were inaccessible." "We have been searching the entire grid, mistress," the officer replied. "The High Council is in a panic. We need to escort you to the upper levels immediately." "I require a moment to collect myself," Sarah said effectively, dismissing the urgency of an entire security squad with a wave of her hand. "Wait by the lift." She closed the door before they could answer. The lock clicked shut. Sarah turned back to the room. The imperious mask dropped, replaced by a faint, tired smile. She looked at Aaron, then at Nora, who was peeking out from behind her father's leg. "Well," Sarah said, tugging at the collar of the oversized shirt. "That buys us 10 minutes before they override the lock, just to ensure I haven't been eaten." The morning light, simulated by the station's main reactor core, began to shift from the dim amber of dawn to the harsh white of the work shift. It illuminated the scratches on the floor and the dust motes dancing in the recycled air. It also illuminated the absurdity of the domestic scene, a silver-furred alien in a mechanic's clothes, a bewildered veteran, and a little girl holding a one-eared rabbit. Nora stepped out from behind Aaron. She tilted her head, studying Sarah with the brutal honesty that only an 8-year-old could summon. "You look pretty in Daddy's shirt," Nora said. Aaron felt the heat rise in his neck. "Nora, go get your boots on. You are going to be late for the learning center." Sarah looked down at herself. The gray fabric engulfed her slender frame. The sleeves rolled up in thick cuffs to free her hands. She ran a clawed thumb over the rough material. "Thank you, little one," Sarah said to Nora. "It is comfortable. It smells like engine grease and safety." "That is just the apartment," Aaron grumbled, moving to clear the table. "Everything here smells like grease." Nora scampered off to the small alcove that served as her room to retrieve her school bag. The moment she was gone, the air in the kitchen grew heavier. The playful banter evaporated, replaced by a tension that Aaron recognized. It was the tension of a transaction about to take place. Sarah reached into the pocket of the flight suit she had discarded earlier, a ruined pile of high-tech mesh lying on a chair. She pulled out a small rectangular object. It was a credit chip, black and gold, pulsing with a faint internal light. She placed it on the scratched metal table. The sound was a solid, heavy thud. "Aaron," she said, and her tone was businesslike now. "This should cover last night, and the damage to your vessel." Aaron stopped wiping the table. He looked at the chip. He knew what a standard credit chip looked like. They were blue plastic and usually empty. This was a bearer bond issued by the Interstellar Banking Clan. He did not need to scan it to know it contained more money than he had made in the last 10 years combined. 50,000 credits. Maybe more. It was enough to buy a ticket off this rock. Enough to buy Nora a real education, real food. A life where she did not have to listen to the air recycler's wheeze every night. He stared at it. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Take it," Sarah said, mistaking his silence for hesitation. "It is untraceable. You can clear your debts. You can move to a station with a real atmosphere. Consider it compensation for the loss of your maintenance pod." Aaron looked up from the chip to Sarah's face. Her amber eyes were calm, expecting gratitude. She was solving a problem. She was balancing the ledger. She had been saved, and now she was paying the savior. It was logical. It was fair. And it made Aaron want to punch the wall. A cold, hard anger ignited in his chest, the same anger that had made him walk away from a military pension 20 years ago because he refused to sign a false report. He reached out, his large hand covering the chip. Sarah smiled slightly, expecting him to pocket it. Instead, Aaron slid it back across the table with enough force that it spun and hit her hand. "Take it back," Aaron said. His voice was low, a growl that rumbled in his chest. Sarah blinked, her ears twitching in confusion. "Excuse me." "I said take it back," Aaron repeated, straightening up to his full height. "I did not pull you out of that wreck for a payout." Sarah frowned, her brow furrowing. She looked at the chip, then back at him. "I do not understand. You are a freelance mechanic. You lost your primary source of income, your pod saving me." "This is not charity, Aaron. This is restitution. It is generous." "Generous?" Aaron laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was a dry, sharp sound. "You think throwing a stack of credits at me makes us square. You think that is what happened last night, a transaction." "Most humans would call it a lottery win," Sarah countered, her voice sharpening. "Do not be foolish. I have seen how you live. I have seen the patches on your daughter's clothes. You have a child to provide for. Pride is a luxury you cannot afford." The mention of Nora was a tactical error. Aaron's eyes narrowed. "I feed my daughter," Aaron said, his voice deadly quiet. "I keep a roof over her head. And I teach her that when someone is dying in the dark, you help them. You help them because they are breathing, and they are scared, not because you expect them to open a checkbook in the morning." "I am not insulting you," Sarah snapped her tail, lashing behind her in agitation. "I am trying to express gratitude. Among my people, debts must be paid. If I leave here owing you my life, it creates an imbalance. It weakens my standing. It binds me to you." "Then be bound," Aaron said. He leaned over the table, invading her personal space. "Live with it. You are alive because I made a choice. Not a business deal. A choice. If you pay me for it, you turn a good deed into a job. And I don't work for you." Sarah stared at him. Her mouth opened slightly, revealing the tips of her fangs, but she said nothing. She was searching his face, looking for the greed, the negotiation tactic, the bluff. She found nothing but granite obstinacy. She slowly reached out and picked up the chip. Her movements were stiff. She was a diplomat, trained to read desires and manipulate outcomes. But she had evidently never encountered a man who would choose moral superiority over a hot meal. "You are a stubborn creature," Sarah said softly. There was no mockery in her voice now, only a strange, baffled wonder. "You would deny your child comfort to preserve your own ego." "I am preserving her father," Aaron corrected her. "She needs a father she can respect more than she needs new boots." Sarah held his gaze for a long moment. The bioluminescence in her eyes flared and dimmed. She seemed to be re-evaluating the data, recalibrating her understanding of the species she was dealing with. "Very well," she said. She slipped the chip back into her pocket. "I apologize. I assumed." "Yeah," Aaron said, stepping back and crossing his arms. "You did." The air between them was electric, charged with the clash of two different worlds. Sarah looked at the door, where the security team was waiting. She looked back at Aaron. "What is your full name?" she asked. "I know you are Aaron, but for the records." "Aaron Cole," he said. "Aaron Cole," she repeated. She tested the name on her tongue, as if memorizing the flavor of it. "I will not forget it." She walked to the door. She did not look back at the kitchen, or the coffee mug, or the cot where she had slept. She composed herself, smoothing the fur on her arms, straightening her spine until she looked every inch the aristocrat again. She opened the door. The hallway light flooded in, harsh and blinding. Two armored guards stepped forward, but she silenced them with a gesture. She stepped out. The door slid shut behind her, with a final decisive hiss. Aaron let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for an hour. His shoulders slumped. He looked at the empty table where the fortune had sat just seconds ago. "You idiot," he whispered to himself. "You absolute self-righteous idiot." The door to Nora's room creaked open. Nora stood there, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes wide. She had heard. The walls were thin. She heard everything. "She is gone?" Nora asked. "Yeah, Peanut," Aaron said, forcing a smile. "She had to go back to work. Big, important diplomat stuff." Nora walked over to the table. She traced the spot where the chip had been. "You were mean to her," Nora said quietly. Aaron winced. It hit him harder than a shrapnel wound. "I wasn't mean, Nora. We just had a disagreement about how things work." "She wanted to give you a present," Nora insisted. "And you yelled." "I didn't yell," Aaron lied. "I just spoke firmly. Look, sometimes being right means not being nice. You can't just take things from people even if they offer. It changes things. It makes you small." Nora looked at him, her brown eyes skeptical. She did not look convinced. She looked like a child who knew that being small was better than being hungry. "Come on," Aaron said, grabbing his jacket. "We are going to be late. And if you are late, I have to listen to Mistress Halloway lecture me about parental punctuality again." The afternoon shift on Prometheus 7 was a sensory assault. The corridors were crowded with shift workers moving between the docks and the habitation ring. The air smelled of ozone, unwashed bodies, and the metallic tang of welding fumes. Aaron walked Nora home from the station school, his heavy boots clanking on the grate. He held her hand tight. The crowds were thicker today. Rumors of the plasma storm damage had everyone on edge, worrying about overtime cancellations and hull integrity. "Can we get fizzy pop?" Nora asked as they passed the sector canteen. Aaron instinctively reached for his pocket, his fingers brushing against the cred stick that held his current balance. He knew the number by heart. 74 credits. A fizzy pop, a tube of carbonated sugar-laden syrup, cost 5 credits. If he bought it, that was 5 credits less for the protein blocks they needed for dinner. He had lost his pod. He had no current contracts. The 2,000 credits he was supposed to get for the relay job were gone, vaporized along with his ship. He stopped in front of the vending window. Nora was looking at the neon sign with a longing that broke his heart. He thought about the black and gold chip on his kitchen table. 50,000 credits. He could have bought the whole canteen. He could have bought the franchise. "Take it back. I didn't do it for money." His own voice echoed in his head, mocking him. Was it nobility? Or was it just vanity? Was he starving his daughter to feed a ghost of the man he used to be? "Not today, Peanut," Aaron said, his voice rough. "I forgot to transfer funds to the spending account." Nora's face fell. It was a small micro-expression, a slight drooping of the corners of her mouth, but she corrected it instantly. She was a station kid. She knew how to handle disappointment. "That's okay," she said brightly. "I am not that thirsty anyway." The lie was worse than the begging. "Tell you what," Aaron said, squeezing her hand. "Tonight we make a special stew, with the extra spice packet." "The red packet?" Nora asked, her eyes lighting up slightly. "The red packet," Aaron promised. That spice packet was his lunch for tomorrow. He would go hungry until he could pick up a welding gig at the lower docks, but he would not let her see him sweat. They walked home in silence, the weight of the morning's decision hanging between them like invisible gravity. Aaron looked at the other workers, men and women with gray skin and tired eyes, counting their chits, worrying about oxygen taxes. He was one of them. He had chosen to remain one of them. And for the first time in 20 years, Aaron Cole wondered if he was a hero or just a fool. Dinner was a quiet affair. The special stew was just rehydrated soy protein with a dash of synthetic paprika, but Aaron served it like it was a banquet. Nora ate with enthusiasm, talking about a lesson on nebulas she had learned that day. Aaron picked at his food. He wasn't hungry. The knot in his stomach took up too much room. "Can we watch The Hollow?" Nora asked as she scraped the last of the gravy from her bowl. Sure, Aaron said. 30 minutes, then bed. He reached for the remote and flicked on the wall screen. The projector sputtered, then resolved into the blue-tinted image of the Galactic News Network. Usually the news was boring trade tariffs, mining reports, piracy warnings in the Outer Rim. Aaron half watched his mind drifting to where he could find a replacement pressure valve for the air scrubber. Then, the anchor's voice changed pitch. Breaking news from the Ashfall sector, the anchor announced. We go live to the High Council flagship, the Gilded Claw, where a stunning revelation has just been made regarding the disappearance of Lady Sarah Nightwind. Aaron froze. His fork clattered into his bowl. The screen shifted. The image was crisp, high definition, a world away from the grainy signal of the station. Standing on a podium of obsidian and light was Sarah. She was not the woman in the kitchen. She was transformed. She wore a ceremonial robe of deep indigo silk, embroidered with silver thread that seemed to move on its own. Her neck was adorned with a collar of platinum and sapphires. But it was her ears that drew the eye. They were draped in delicate chains of light crystal, a symbol of high royalty among the Vulpari. She looked terrifying. She looked powerful. She looked like she owned the stars. Citizens of the Dominion and the Alliance, Sarah spoke. Her voice was amplified, resonating with a commanding timbre. As many of you know, my transport was caught in the ion surge 3 cycles ago. The camera zoomed in on her face. Her amber eyes looked straight through the lens. I stand before you tonight only because of the actions of a single individual, Sarah continued. Aaron stopped breathing. A human, Sarah said. The word caused a ripple of murmurs among the Vulpari dignitaries standing behind her. A worker on station Prometheus 7. He intercepted my vessel in the heart of a Category 5 storm. He sacrificed his own craft, his livelihood to shield mine. The reporter, a holographic avatar floating next to her, interjected. Mistress Nightwind, surely this individual has been handsomely rewarded. The bounty for a diplomat's safety is substantial. Sarah smiled. It was a small, secret smile, the same one she had worn when she teased him about the coffee. I offered him everything, Sarah said. I offered him wealth that would rival a planetary governor's salary. I offered him exemption from station laws. I offered him a life of ease. She paused for effect. The entire galaxy seemed to lean in. And, the reporter prompted. He threw it back in my face, Sarah said. A gasp went through the audience on the screen. He told me, Sarah continued, her voice softening, that he did not save me for credits. He saved me because it was the right thing to do. He described himself as a simple father, but I tell you this, in that moment, he was the noblest creature I have ever encountered. She looked directly into the camera. It felt like she was looking right into Module 4B. He is brave. He is selfless. He risked everything and asked for nothing in return. His name is Aaron Cole, and the House of Nightwind owes him a debt that can never be fully repaid. The screen flashed an image-grainy footage from the station's external sensors. It showed Aaron's tiny battered pod, firing its grapple hooks, dragging the sleek Vulpari yacht away from the struts just seconds before the pod exploded. Daddy! Nora screamed, jumping off her chair. She pointed at the screen, vibrating with excitement. That's you, and that's the lady from breakfast. Aaron sat paralyzed. He gripped the handle of the pot of stew so hard his knuckles turned white. She had done it. She had outmaneuvered him. He had refused her money to keep his anonymity, to keep his life simple. So instead, she had just painted a target on his back the size of a moon. She had made him a hero. Daddy, look, Nora pulled at his sleeve. She said you are noble. What does noble mean? It means, Aaron's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. It means doing something stupid for a good reason. On the screen, the press conference was ending. Sarah turned to leave her silver tail swaying with regal elegance. The reporters were shouting questions. Who is he? Where is he? Will you see him again? Do you think she will come back? Nora asked, her eyes shining with a hope that terrified him. Aaron looked at the screen. He looked at the silk, the jewels, the army of guards surrounding her. He looked around his apartment at the peeling paint, the exposed wiring, the half-eaten bowl of synthetic mush. I doubt it, Peanut, Aaron said heavily. People like her don't come back to places like this. It was a nice story for the cameras, but the show is over. He turned off the holo. The room plunged back into the dim, yellowish gloom of the apartment. But she liked you, Nora whispered. She held your hand. She was in shock, Aaron said, standing up to take the dishes to the sink. Go brush your teeth. School tomorrow. Nora lingered for a moment, looking at the blank screen, then turned and walked slowly to the bathroom. Aaron stood at the sink, staring at his reflection in the dark metal. He looked old. He looked tired. He thought the chapter was closed. He thought he had won the moral victory and could go back to being invisible. But as he washed the dishes, scrubbing the stubborn grease from the plates, Aaron Cole had a sinking feeling. The universe was not done with him yet. And Sarah Nightwind was not the kind of woman who let a debt go unpaid, even if she had to turn his entire world upside down to settle it. He had refused the money. He had kept his pride. But in doing so, he had planted a seed in the mind of a powerful woman, a seed that was about to grow into a forest of trouble. You should have taken the money, Cole, he whispered to the empty kitchen. But deep down, in the part of him that was still the soldier who held the line, he knew he was lying. He didn't want the money. He wanted to be the man she saw on that screen. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The sublevels of Prometheus 7 possessed a distinct atmosphere, a heavy, humid soup of recycled air that tasted of sulfur and stale sweat. It was the smell of the station's intestines, the tangled mess of pipes and conduits that kept the gleaming upper decks alive. Aaron Cole wiped his forehead with a rag that was already black with grease. He was knee-deep in the maintenance crawlspace of Sector 9, welding a hairline fracture in a coolant intake valve. The heat down here was oppressive, hovering near 40 degrees Celsius, but the pay was double the standard rate because nobody else wanted to crawl into a vent that whispered like a dying animal. He adjusted the goggles over his eyes and triggered the plasma torch. The blue flame hissed, biting into the metal. It had been 7 days since the broadcast. 7 days since his face had been plastered across the galactic network. 7 days since he had become the hero of the Ashfall Rim. The fame had been suffocating. Strangers stopped him in the corridor to shake his hand. The canteen lady gave him extra protein mash without charging him. Even his landlord, a man who usually looked at tenants as if they were cockroaches, had offered to fix the leaky faucet in his bathroom. Aaron hated it. He hated the attention. He hated the feeling that he was being watched. Most of all, he hated the lingering question in everyone's eyes. If you saved a princess, why are you still fixing toilets in the basement? He finished the weld and clicked the torch off. He pushed his goggles up onto his forehead, blinking in the dim emergency lighting. Nice bead, a voice said from the shadows behind him. Consistent temperature, minimal slag. Aaron did not jump. He did not reach for a weapon. He simply sighed, a long, weary sound that deflated his chest. He knew that voice. It was the voice of velvet over gravel. He turned around slowly in the cramped tunnel. Sarah Nightwind stood 3 meters away, leaning against a rusted support strut. She looked different. The ceremonial robes and the jeweled chains were gone. Today, she wore a simple gray tunic and trousers that looked suspiciously like standard station fatigues, though tailored to accommodate her tail. Her silver fur, usually shimmering with groomed perfection, looked muted, almost matte. She had toned down the bioluminescence in her eyes, leaving them a warm, steady amber. You are in a restricted area, Mistress Nightwind, Aaron said, wiping his hands on his pants. If security catches you down here, they will have a stroke. I disabled the sensors on this deck 20 minutes ago, Sarah replied, stepping over a puddle of condensation. "And please stop calling me mistress. It makes me feel like my mother." "What do you want?" Aaron asked. He picked up his tool bag, signaling that he was busy. "If this is about another check, save the paper. My answer has not changed." "We need to talk, Aaron," Sarah said. Her tone was not commanding, nor was it playful. It was serious. "Not about money. About the truth." Aaron paused. He looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time since she had walked out of his apartment. She looked tired. There was a heaviness in her shoulders that the cameras had not captured. "Talk fast," Aaron said. "My shift ends in 10 minutes and I have to pick up Nora." Sarah tapped a device on her wrist. A holographic projector hummed to life, filling the cramped space between them, with a grainy, blue-tinted video. Aaron recognized it immediately. It was the sensor log from the station's external array. He watched himself. He watched his tiny, battered maintenance pod firing its thrusters against the violent swirl of the plasma storm. He saw the magnetic cables shoot out, latching onto the spinning silver teardrop of the Vulpari yacht. He saw the strain on the hull, the metal buckling. Then, he saw the explosion. The rear of his pod disintegrated. The ejection seat fired a split second before the cockpit turned into a fireball. The video shifted. It was internal footage now taken from the security cameras in the docking bay. He saw a figure in a bulky pressure suit himself, limping toward the crash. He saw himself cut the door open. He saw himself emerge carrying a limp silver form, shielding her head with his hand as debris fell from the ceiling. Sarah froze the image there. The hologram showed Aaron looking down at the unconscious Vulpari woman in his arms, with an expression of fierce, terrifying determination. "I did not see this until yesterday," Sarah said softly. "I knew you saved me, but I did not know how close you came to dying. The telemetry shows your heart stopped for 6 seconds after the ejection impact." "It rebooted," Aaron grunted, looking away from the image. "I am hard to kill." "It is not about resilience," Sarah said. She deactivated the hologram. The darkness of the tunnel rushed back in. "In Vulpari culture, we have a concept called Ve Kora. It translates roughly to the life bond." "You mentioned bonding before," Aaron said. "I told you I am not interested in alien marriage." "It is not marriage," Sarah corrected him, a flicker of amusement crossing her face. "Marriage is a contract of affection and property. Ve Kora is a law of the soul. When one being knowingly trades their existence for another, when they step into the void, so that another may draw breath, the scales of the universe tip." She took a step closer. Her amber eyes locked onto his. "I am alive because you are not," she said. "Or rather, I am alive because you were willing to not be. That creates a deficit, a spiritual vacuum. Until I can balance that scale, my life is not entirely my own. It is tethered to yours." Aaron wiped sweat from his neck. "Look, Sarah, I appreciate the philosophy lesson, really. But I am a human mechanic. I don't have a soul scale. I have rent to pay and a kid to raise. So I hereby officially release you from your debt. Go be a diplomat. Go rule the galaxy. We are square." Sarah shook her head slowly. "It does not work that way, Aaron. You cannot dismiss gravity just because you do not believe in it. The bond exists whether you acknowledge it or not. And because of that, I cannot simply walk away and leave you in." She gestured around the filthy tunnel. "This," she reached into her tunic pocket. Aaron tensed, expecting another credit chip. Instead, she pulled out a folded sheaf of thick, cream-colored paper. It was actual paper, not a digital pad, a sign of extreme wealth and official importance. She held it out to him. "What is this?" Aaron asked, not taking it. "Read it," she said. Aaron hesitated, then wiped his hand on his shirt again and took the papers. He unfolded them under the light of the tunnel's emergency strip. It was a property deed. Sector 4, Habitation Ring, B, Block 7 through 12. Aaron scanned the document. His eyes widened. Block 7 was his building. It was the rusting, leaking tenement where he and Nora lived. He looked further down the page. Owner of record Aaron Cole. "You bought my apartment," Aaron asked, his voice rising in disbelief. "I bought the building," Sarah corrected, "and the 2 adjacent blocks. The landlord was eager to sell once I pointed out 72 violations of the station safety code that I could report to the Alliance Oversight Committee." She pointed to the second document in the stack. "And this," she said, "is the charter for the Cole Foundation." Aaron read the heading, "The Cole Foundation for Families of the Ashfall Rim." "It is a non-profit organization," Sarah explained, her voice gaining speed, fueled by a nervous energy. "Fully endowed by the Nightwind estate. The mission is to provide housing subsidies, educational grants, and emergency medical funds for single-parent families on the frontier stations. I have named you the executive director." Aaron stared at the papers. The numbers on the endowment line were staggering. 10 million credits. Enough to buy a small moon. He felt the blood rushing in his ears. It wasn't gratitude. It was a hot, sharp spike of humiliation. "You bought me," Aaron whispered. He looked up at her, and his face was hard as stone. "I told you I did not want your money," Aaron said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "So you just went around me. You bought the roof over my head. You put my name on a charity so you can parade me around like a pet human." "No," Sarah stepped forward, her ears flattening against her skull. "That is not it at all." "What is it then?" Aaron shouted. The sound echoed down the metal tunnel. "You think because you are a Nightwind you can just fix everything with a check. You think you can fix me." He shoved the papers back at her. She did not take them, so they fluttered to the wet floor, landing in the puddle of condensation. "I am not a broken toy, Sarah, and I am not a PR stunt to make the Vulpari look benevolent. I am a father, and I provide for my daughter. Me, not you, not your clan." Sarah stood frozen. Her tail was still. She looked down at the wet papers, then backed up at him. The poise cracked. For a moment she looked like a young girl who had tried to help and only managed to break a vase. "I was wrong," she said quietly. The anger in Aaron's chest hit a wall. He blinked. "What?" "I was wrong," Sarah repeated. She did not pick up the papers. She just stood there, her hands open at her sides. "When I left your module that morning, I was angry. You rejected my gift. You rejected my help. It stung my pride. I am a diplomat. I am used to people begging for my favor, not throwing it back at me." She took a deep breath. "I went back to my ship. I looked at the Foundation plan, and I realized that I was doing exactly what you accused me of. I was trying to use money to silence the voice in my head that said I owed you more than I could pay. I was trying to turn you into a symbol, so I did not have to deal with you as a person." Aaron watched her. The sincerity in her voice was disarming. It was rare to hear a politician admit a mistake. It was even rarer to hear one admit a weakness. "So, why come back?" Aaron asked, his voice lowering. "Why bring the papers?" "Because I looked at the data," Sarah said. "I looked at the poverty rates on this station. I looked at how many children drop out of school because their parents cannot afford the oxygen tax. I looked at the reality you live in." She stepped closer, ignoring the dirty water soaking into her boots. "I cannot fix you, Aaron. You are not broken. You are perhaps the most solid thing I have ever met. But the system you live in is broken, and I have the power to fix that. But I cannot do it alone. I do not know these people. I do not know what they need. I only know what the charts tell me." She pointed a clawed finger at his chest. "I don't need a poster boy. I have plenty of those. I need a partner. I need someone who knows why the air recyclers fail in Sector 9. I need someone who knows which families are starving and which ones are just working the system. I need you to help me run this. Not as a favor, but because if you don't, I am going to waste 10 million credits buying the wrong things for the wrong people." Aaron looked at her. He looked at the fire in her eyes. She wasn't offering him a handout. She was offering him a wrench big enough to fix the whole damn station. He looked down at the papers in the mud. He thought about Nora. He thought about Mrs. Gable down the hall, who was coughing up blood because she couldn't afford a filter mask. He thought about the kid in Nora's class, who came to school with no lunch every day. "I don't want a salary," Aaron said. "You will take a salary," Sarah countered instantly. "A fair wage for the position. Because if you don't, you are undercutting the labor market, and I know how you feel about scabs." Aaron let out a short, dry laugh. She had him there. "And I don't wear a suit," he added. "You can wear your grease-stained coveralls for all I care." Sarah said, a small smile returning to her face. "Just wash your hands before you touch the documents." Aaron bent down and picked up the soggy papers. He shook the water off them. "The landlord of Block 7 is a crook," Aaron said. "He has been overcharging for water for 5 years." "I know," Sarah said. "I fired him this morning. You are the landlord now." Aaron looked at the deed. Owner of record. "We do this my way," Aaron said, looking up at her. "No PR, no cameras. We help the people who actually need it. And if I smell even a whiff of politics, I walk." Sarah extended her hand. "Deal." Aaron took her hand. It was small in his, but her grip was iron. "Deal," he said. The transition from welding pipes to managing a multi-million credit foundation was, to put it mildly, jarring. 3 days later, Aaron sat in a conference room on the spire deck, the highest level of Prometheus 7, where the gravity was generated at a perfect 1.0 G, and the viewports were made of diamond glass. The table was sleek obsidian. The chairs floated on magnetic fields. Across from him sat Sarah and a team of 3 Volpari assistants who typed furiously on holographic keyboards. Nora was there too. She sat in the corner of the room on a plush beanbag chair, coloring in a digital sketchbook. She was currently drawing a picture of Sarah fighting a dragon that looked suspiciously like the station's maintenance chief. "The initial proposal," said one of the assistants, a young Volpari male named Kale, "is to invest 40% of the fund into upgrading the station's central reactor. This will lower energy costs for all residents by 12%. Aaron frowned, tapping his pen on the table. He was wearing a clean shirt, not a suit, but a button-down he had bought for Nora's last birthday party. It felt tight across the shoulders. "No," Aaron said. The room went silent. Kyle blinked. "Sir, the energy efficiency metrics are—" "The reactor is fine," Aaron said. "It is old, but it holds. The problem isn't the cost of power. It is the cost of calories." He looked at Sarah. She was watching him, her chin resting on her hand, fascinated. 12% savings on a power bill is 10 credits a month, Aaron explained. That buys 2 protein bars. It doesn't change anything. You want to help single parents. You start with the food. "Food subsidies?" Sarah asked. "Food security," Aaron corrected. "You cannot learn if you are hungry. You cannot look for a better job if you are worried about where your kid's next meal is coming from. We set up a free meal program in the schools. Real food, vegetables, fruit, not paste. We pay the canteen staff double to stay late and cook it. We source the produce from the hydroponic bays on level 12. I know the guys running it. They throw away tons of ugly produce that is perfectly edible." He leaned forward. "You feed the kids, you free up the parents' money for rent. You free up their minds. Stress kills people down here faster than radiation. We lower the stress." Sarah looked at Kale. "Scrap the reactor plan. Draft the food initiative. Contact the hydroponics guild." "But, mistress," Kale stammered, "that is incredibly logistical. It involves hundreds of micro-contracts." "Then get typing," Sarah said sharply. She turned back to Aaron, her eyes gleaming. "What else?" "Medical debt," Aaron said. "There is a waiting list for the medbay because people can't pay the admission fee. We buy the debt. Pennies on the credit. We clear the books for anyone making under $20,000 a year." They worked for 4 hours straight. Aaron dismantled their sterile, high-level theories with the brutal hammer of his lived experience. Sarah translated his grunts and anecdotes into policy. They fell into a rhythm. He was the anchor. She was the sail. He provided the direction. She provided the momentum. At one point during a lull, while the assistants were scrambling to find the contact info for the hydroponics foreman, Aaron took a sip of his coffee. It was the good stuff again. "You are good at this," Sarah said quietly. She was sitting next to him now, reviewing a data pad. "I am just fixing things," Aaron shrugged. "Same as a pipe. You find the leak, you patch it." "It is not the same," Sarah said. "You see people. Most leaders see numbers. You see the faces behind them." "Daddy sees everything," Nora piped up from the corner, without looking up from her drawing. "He knows when I pretend to brush my teeth, but I really just ran the water," Aaron chuckled. "That is called counterintelligence, peanut." Nora spun her chair around. She looked at Aaron, then at Sarah. The two of them were sitting close, their arms almost touching on the table. The afternoon light from the volcanic planet below bathed the room in a warm orange glow. "You guys fight a lot," Nora observed. "We are debating, Nora," Sarah said. "It is a healthy exchange of ideas." "You fight like the people in my soap operas," Nora said. "Before they kiss," Aaron choked on his coffee. He coughed violently, slamming the mug down. Liquid sloshed onto the obsidian table. Sarah stiffened. Her ears, which had been relaxed, suddenly shot straight up. The fur on the tips turned a darker shade of silver, and a flush of violet color spread across the inside of the ear membranes, the vulpari equivalent of a deep blush. "Nora," Aaron wheezed, wiping his mouth. "That is inappropriate." "Why?" Nora asked innocently. "She bought you a house. You saved her life. Why don't you two just get married already? Then I could have a tail too." "Can I grow a tail if you get married?" "Biologically, no," Sarah said, her voice an octave higher than usual. She refused to look at Aaron. She was staring intensely at a blank spot on the wall. "And marriage is a complex socio-political arrangement, little one. It is not simply decided." "Boring," Nora declared, spinning back to her drawing. Aaron looked at Sarah. She risked a glance at him. Their eyes met. For a second, the air in the room changed. It wasn't the tension of the first meeting or the anger of the second. It was something softer, something terrifyingly domestic. Aaron felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. He quickly looked away. "Right," Aaron said, his voice gruff. "Next item. The air filters in Block 9. Later that evening, after the assistants had been dismissed and Nora had fallen asleep on the beanbag chair, the room was quiet. The station had rotated to the dark side of the planet, and the stars were visible through the diamond glass, a field of diamonds scattered on black velvet. Aaron was packing up his notes. Sarah was standing by the window, looking out at the void. "I was not born a nightwind," she said suddenly. Aaron stopped. He looked at her back. "What?" "The press calls me the heiress, the princess of the Silver Spire." She turned to face him. "But I was not born in the palace. I was found in the rubble of the colony on Kethra Prime." Aaron stiffened. Kethra Prime. That was the site of the decisive battle in the Terran-Vulpari War 20 years ago. The war he had fought in. "My parents were killed in the orbital bombardment." Sarah continued, her voice, steady but hollow. "I was 4 years old. I spent 3 days trapped under a collapsed bulkhead waiting to die. The Nightwind Patriarch found me when he was inspecting the ruins. He took me in. He gave me a name. He gave me a life." She walked over to the table and sat on the edge of it, looking down at her hands. "That is why I became a diplomat, Aaron. Because I know what war costs. I know what it feels like to be small and helpless, while giants fight above your head." Aaron stood there, the silence stretching between them. He saw the cracks in the porcelain doll. He saw the scars under the silver fur. "I was there," Aaron said. His voice was a whisper. Sarah looked up. At Kethra. I was on the Indomitable, Aaron said. I was a combat engineer. We targeted the shield generators. We didn't know the colony shelter was linked to the same grid. When the shields blew, he closed his eyes. The memory was a jagged shard of glass in his mind. My wife died 3 years later, Aaron said, opening his eyes. Not in the war. An accident. A reactor leak on a civilian transport. I was deployed 2 sectors away. I couldn't get to her. I spent 20 years fixing things, building things, trying to make sure nothing ever broke again. Because when things break, people die. He walked over to the window and stood next to her. He didn't look at her. He looked at the reflection of them in the glass, a human man and a Volpari woman standing side by side against the dark. We are a pair, aren't we? Aaron said softly. 2 survivors trying to save the world because we couldn't save the ones who mattered. Sarah reached out. Her hand hovered for a moment, then settled on his forearm. Her claws were retracted, her touch gentle. Maybe, she said. Or maybe we are saving the world so that no one else has to be like us. The touch sent a jolt through Aaron. It wasn't electric. It was grounding. It felt like coming home. You are a good man, Aaron Cole, Sarah whispered. And your daughter is right. You worry too much. And you spend too much money, Aaron retorted, but there was no bite in it. He looked down at her. She was looking up at him, and the distance between them seemed to have vanished. Speaking of money, Sarah said, pulling her hand back but not moving away. I have a proposition. If it involves another building, I quit, Aaron said. Sarah laughed. It was a real laugh, unburdened by politics. No buildings. But I realized something. In all this planning for food security and meal programs, we have neglected a critical data point. Which is, I have never seen you eat a real meal, Sarah said. And I have it on good authority, specifically from a very informative 8-year-old, that Nora has never tasted authentic vanilla ice cream. Aaron looked at Nora, sleeping soundly in the corner. No, she hasn't. Synthetic frost whips are the best I can do. There is a restaurant on the observation deck, Sarah said. The Blue Horizon. They import dairy from Terra, and they have a steak that is not printed from soy protein. By Sarah. Aaron started his defensive walls, trying to rise one last time. I can't afford. I am not asking you to pay, Sarah interrupted. And I am not offering it as charity. You saved my life. We are partners. And I am hungry. The least I can do is buy my partner a steak. She tilted her head, her ears twitching playfully. Unless you are afraid to be seen in public with a fox, Aaron looked at her. He saw the challenge in her eyes, but he also saw the hope. He thought about the special stew. He thought about Nora's face when she saw the ice cream on the holovids. He smiled. It was a rusty, crooked thing, but it was real. I am not afraid of a fox, Aaron said. But I warn you, Nora is a messy eater, and she will ask you 1,000 questions about your tail. I look forward to it, Sarah said. The Blue Horizon was a place Aaron had only seen in pictures. It was a dome of glass at the very top of the station, filled with real plants, soft music, and people who wore clothes that cost more than his yearly salary. But as they walked to their table, Aaron didn't feel small. He held Nora's hand on his left, and Sarah walked on his right. He wore his best clean shirt, and Sarah wore a simple evening dress that shimmered like starlight. Heads turned. Whispers followed them. Is that the mechanic? Is that the Nightwind heiress? Aaron didn't care. He looked at Nora, whose eyes were wide as saucers, as a waiter placed a bowl of 3-scoop vanilla bean ice cream in front of her. Is this real cow milk? Nora whispered, looking at the spoon like it was a holy relic. 100%, Sarah said, smiling. Nora took a bite. Her face melted into pure, unadulterated bliss. Oh my gosh. Daddy, you have to try this. Aaron took a bite. It was cold, sweet, and creamy, a taste he hadn't experienced since he was a boy on Earth. "It is good peanut," Aaron said, his throat tight. He looked at Sarah. She wasn't eating. She was watching them, a look of profound contentment on her face. It was a look that said she had found something she didn't know she was looking for. "Thank you," Aaron mouthed silently. Sarah nodded. Suddenly, the station's proximity alarms chimed a soft melodic tone, reserved for VIP arrivals, distinct from the harsh klaxons of emergency. Outside the glass dome, a massive shape emerged from the shadow of the planet. It was a ship, but not just any ship. It was a Volpari heavy cruiser, sleek and predatory, its hull painted in the deep indigo and silver of the royal house. It dwarfed the station's docking arms. The restaurant went silent. Everyone stared at the Leviathan hanging in the void. Sarah's smile faltered. She put down her fork, her ears pressed back against her head. "Is that?" Aaron asked, sensing the shift in her mood. "My father's flagship," Sarah said, her voice tight. "The Silver Fang." A personal comms unit on Sarah's wrist beeped. She tapped it. A holographic message projected into the air above the table, visible only to them. It was the crest of the Nightwind clan. "High Ambassador Nightwind," a formal voice intoned. "His Majesty requests your presence, and the presence of the human named Aaron Cole, immediately." Nora looked up from her ice cream, a ring of milk around her mouth. "Are we in trouble?" Sarah looked at Aaron. The softness was gone, replaced by the steel of the diplomat. But underneath the steel, Aaron saw fear. Not for herself, but for him. "No, little one," Sarah said, reaching out to wipe Nora's face with a napkin. "We are not in trouble, but dinner is over." Aaron looked at the massive warship. He looked at Sarah, whose hand was trembling slightly on the table. He reached out and covered her hand with his. "We face it together," Aaron said. "Partner." Sarah looked at him, surprised by his touch, then squeezed his hand back. "Together," she agreed. As the transport shuttle detached from the cruiser and headed toward the station, Aaron realized that the simple chapter of Saving the Princess was over. The book had just opened to a much more dangerous page. He wasn't just the guy who pulled her from a wreck anymore. He was the man standing beside her, against the weight of an empire. And for the first time in 20 years, Aaron Cole was ready for a fight. Not for a flag or a paycheck, but for the two people sitting at the table with him. The dinner at the Blue Horizon had started as a celebration of small victories, a full stomach, a successful foundation launch, and the first real smile Aaron had seen on his daughter's face in months. But as the massive Volpari cruiser, the Silver Fang, blotted out the starlight above the observation dome, the atmosphere at the table shifted from warm domesticity to cold dread. Sarah Nightwind sat frozen. Her hand was still under Aaron's, but her gaze was fixed upward, locked on the indigo hull of the warship. "Is that bad?" Nora asked, her voice small. She had lowered her spoon, the melting vanilla ice cream forgotten. "It is not bad, little one," Sarah said, though her voice lacked its usual melodic confidence. "It is simply inevitable. My family has a sense of timing that is as impeccable as it is inconvenient." Aaron squeezed her hand gently before pulling away. He signaled the waiter for the bill, but Sarah stopped him. "It is already taken care of," she said, standing up. She smoothed the front of her shimmering dress, the motion mechanical. "The Nightwind account covers all establishments on this deck. Another perk of the Gilded Cage." "Sarah," Aaron said, standing to face her. He kept his voice low, ignoring the whispers of the other patrons, who were gawking at the warship. "You don't have to go alone. If they are here to drag you back, they have to go through station customs. And me." Sarah looked at him, her amber eyes softening. "They are not here to drag me, Aaron. They are here to inspect me, and you." "Me?" "You saved the heir to the High Council," Sarah said. "You bound yourself to the bloodline. Did you think the king and queen would simply send a thank you card?" A low chime echoed from her wrist communicator again. "The shuttle is docking at Bay 1, Sarah translated the coded pulse. "We have 20 minutes. Aaron looked at Nora, then at his own reflection in the glass, a tired mechanic in a button-down shirt that was slightly too tight in the shoulders. He looked at Sarah, a creature of starlight and politics. "Okay," Aaron said, exhaling a breath he felt like he had been holding since the storm. "Let's go meet the in-laws." Sarah let out a startled laugh, a sharp bark of sound. "Do not let my father hear you call him that. He has vaporized moons for less." The walk to the observation deck promenade was quiet. The station crowds parted for them, partly because of Sarah's presence, but mostly because of the aura of impending doom radiating from Aaron. They stopped at a viewing railing before heading to the lift. The station spun slowly, offering a panoramic view of the Silver Fang. It was a predator of a ship, sleek and curved like a claw, bristling with energy cannons that could boil an ocean. "I used to break things," Aaron said, suddenly looking at the ship. "In the war. That was my job. I would find the weak point in a structure, a bridge, a shield generator, a morale center, and I would apply pressure until it snapped." Sarah leaned against the railing beside him. Nora was occupied, pressing her nose against the glass, counting the blinking lights on the warship's hull. "And now?" Sarah asked. "Now you fix things." "I'll try," Aaron said. "But sometimes I wonder if I am just patching over cracks that are too deep to hold." He turned to her. "You asked me once if you were a broken thing I was trying to fix." Sarah stiffened slightly. "I remember." "You are not broken, Sarah," Aaron said firmly. "And neither am I. We are just assembled from spare parts. But that doesn't mean we don't work." "Aren't we all a little broken?" she whispered, echoing his words from the night before. "Maybe," Aaron said. "But broken things fit together better. The jagged edges lock." Sarah looked at him, her eyes wide. The bioluminescence in her irises flared a soft pulse of gold. It was a look of terrifying vulnerability. For a diplomat who negotiated peace treaties for billions, she looked completely disarmed by a mechanic with grease under his fingernails. "Daddy," Nora called out. "The shuttle is here. It looks like a silver bug." Aaron turned. A sleek transport vessel was gliding toward the station's VIP airlock. "Time to go," Aaron said. He picked up Nora, swinging her onto his hip. "Remember, Peanuts, be polite. Say please and thank you. And do not ask the king if he sheds." "I promise," Nora giggled. The interior of the Silver Fang was not built for humans. The corridors were too tall, the lighting too dim, shifting between violet and ultraviolet spectrums that made Aaron's eyes ache. The air smelled of ozone and expensive incense. They were escorted by 4 Volpari royal guards. These were not the station security officers Aaron was used to. These were 7-foot-tall warriors in powered battleplates, carrying plasma glaives. They did not speak. They did not look at Aaron. They moved with a silent, predatory grace that made the hair on the back of Aaron's neck stand up. They arrived at the Grand Hall. The doors, made of some iridescent alloy, dissolved into mist to allow them entry. At the far end of the room, on a raised dais, sat 2 thrones. To the left was Queen Alara. She was slender, elegant, her fur the color of moonlight on snow. She wore robes of flowing white silk and looked at them with eyes that were sharp, calculating, but not unkind. To the right was King Vulcan. He was massive. He made Aaron look small. His fur was dark gray, almost black, streaked with silver scars. His mane was thick and wild, like a storm cloud resting on his shoulders. He did not sit on the throne. He sprawled on it, exuding an aura of raw, contained power. Sarah stepped forward and bowed low, sweeping her hand across the floor in a traditional gesture of submission. "Father, Mother," she said. Aaron stood his ground. He did not bow. He was a citizen of the Terran Alliance, not a subject of the Volpari Dominion. He nodded his head respectfully, A soldier, acknowledging a superior officer. "Your Majesties," Aaron said. King Vulcan leaned forward. The movement caused the heavy armor he wore to creak ominously. "So," the king rumbled. His voice was deep enough to rattle the bones in Aaron's chest. "This is the human, the mechanic. His name is Aaron Cole," Sarah said, rising to her full height. "And he is the reason I am standing here instead of floating in the ashfall debris field." The king ignored her. He locked eyes with Aaron. It was a physical weight that started. It tested for weakness. It tested for fear. "You saved my daughter," Vulcan said. "Why?" "Because she was in trouble," Aaron answered simply. "And I was there." "You destroyed your own vessel," the king pressed. "You risked leaving your offspring without a protector. That is not logic. That is madness." "It is called doing the right thing," Aaron said. "I assume that concept exists in the Dominion." The guards stiffened. A low growl started in the king's throat. "Daddy," Nora whispered loudly. "He looks like a bear fox." The tension in the room shattered like glass. Queen Alara covered her mouth a sound suspiciously, like a giggle escaping her. King Vulcan blinked, the ferocity momentarily derailed by the sheer audacity of an 8-year-old human. "And you," the queen said, leaning forward with a smile. "You must be Nora." "Yes, ma'am," Nora said. She pointed at the queen's jewelry. "You are so shiny." "Thank you, child," the queen said. "Come, stand closer. I wish to see the little one who convinced my daughter to buy an entire habitation block." Sarah ushered Nora forward, leaving Aaron standing alone before the king. "We have reviewed the footage," Vulcan said, his voice lower now, but no less intense. "The life bond is not a superstition human. It is a biological and spiritual imperative. By saving her, you have entangled your fate with hers. The Nightwind clan does not take such entanglements lightly." "Neither do I," Aaron said. "Do you seek to exploit this bond?" Vulcan asked sharply. "Do you seek wealth status access to the High Council?" "I rejected the money she offered," Aaron said. "I rejected fame. I am helping her run the Foundation because I live on that station, and I know what needs to be fixed. I am not here for your crown, King Vulcan. I am here because your daughter asked me to dinner." "Dinner," Vulcan scoffed. "You think a steak equates to a royal courtship?" "I think," Aaron said, stepping forward, "that your daughter is the strongest person I have met in 20 years. She doesn't need me to save her. She needs someone to stand next to her who doesn't want anything from her. And that is me." Sarah turned to look at him, her expression stunned. "Daddy is right," Nora piped up, from where she was examining the queen's rings. "Sarah makes Daddy laugh. He hasn't laughed like that since Mommy went to the stars. They feel like a family." The room went silent. Queen Alara looked at Aaron, then at Sarah. She saw the way Sarah was looking at him, not with gratitude, but with a fierce, protective pride. "A family," the queen mused. "That is a dangerous word in our court, human. Family implies weakness. It implies something to lose." "No," Aaron said. "It implies something worth fighting for." King Vulcan opened his mouth to speak, likely to deliver a crushing verdict on the suitability of a human mechanic for the royal house, when the entire ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered and turned red. A siren began to wail a harsh, discordant shriek. "Report!" Vulcan roared, leaping from his throne with surprising speed for his size. A holographic tactical display erupted in the center of the room. "Ambush!" a tactical officer shouted from the comms. "Multiple contacts emerging from the asteroid shadow. No transponders. It is the Red Corsair fleet." "Slavers," Sarah hissed, her hands curling into fists. "Shields up," Vulcan commanded. "Target main batteries." "We cannot target Sire," the officer yelled. "They are deploying a wide-spectrum jamming field. Our sensors are blind. We cannot lock weapons. And the hyperdrive is offline. We are trapped." Aaron stepped toward the tactical map. He looked at the red dots swarming the blue icon of the Silver Fang. The enemy ships were smaller, ugly, cobbled-together vessels, but there were dozens of them. "They are using an archaic dampening field," Aaron said, his eyes scanning the energy readouts. "Old tech, Civil War era." "Silence, human," a guard barked, stepping toward him. "Let him speak," Sarah shouted. "He is a combat engineer." King Vulcan looked at Aaron. "You know this technology." "I fought against it," Aaron said, his voice slipping into the cold, precise cadence of a veteran. "They are flooding the spectrum with white noise. Your sensors are too advanced. They are trying to process too much data and crashing. You are blinded by your own sophistication." The ship shuddered again as a torpedo impacted the shields. "Hull integrity at 90%, the computer announced. "Shields failing." "They want to board," Aaron said. "They want the royals. And they want the human hostages. High value on the slave market." "What is the solution?" Vulcan demanded. "Stop trying to pierce the jammer," Aaron said. "Eat it." "Explain," the Queen ordered. "The jamming field relies on a feedback loop," Aaron said, his hands moving in the air, visualizing the schematic. "If we reverse the polarity of your main deflector dish and sync it to their transmission frequency, we don't block the signal. We pull it in. We turn this ship into a magnetic gravity well for their energy signatures." "That will overload our core," the tactical officer protested. "It is suicide." "No," Aaron said. "It creates a localized singularity. For about 10 seconds, their navigation computers will think your ship is a black hole. Their autopilots will try to correct by firing reverse thrusters at maximum power. But because of the jamming lag, they will overcompensate." He looked at the king. "They will fly right into each other." Vulcan hesitated. It was a desperate, insane plan proposed by a human he had met 5 minutes ago. "I trust him," Sarah said. She stepped to Aaron's side. "Father, I trust him. He saved me once with a wrench and a prayer. Let him try." Vulcan looked at his daughter. Then he looked at Aaron. "Give the human the engineering console," Vulcan commanded. Aaron didn't wait. He ran to the interface. The controls were Volpari tactile and holographic, but the math was universal. Physics did not care what species you were. "Nora, cover your ears," Aaron yelled. He hammered the sequence. "Bypass safety protocols. Invert shield harmonics. Open the intake valves." "Drawing power," Aaron muttered. Come on, you beautiful beast," the ship groaned. A sound like tearing metal echoed through the hull. The lights dimmed to near darkness as Aaron diverted every ounce of power to the deflectors. "Polarity reversed," Aaron shouted, activating the well in 3-2-1 mark. He slammed his hand onto the execution panel. On the tactical display, chaos erupted. The red Corsair ships, which had been circling for the kill, suddenly lurched. Their engines flared white-hot as their navigation computers screamed that they were falling into a gravity well. The autopilots panicked. They fired thrusters erratically. One pirate frigate swung wildly to the left, slamming into its wingman. Another spun out of control, its engines overloading, and detonated in a brilliant flash. The formation collapsed. Within 10 seconds, 6 enemy ships were burning wreckage. The rest broke formation, terrified by the invisible force tearing them apart. "The jamming field is down," the tactical officer cheered. "Sensors are clear. Weapons are online. Fire at will." King Vulcan said, his voice cold as the void. The Silver Fang's main batteries opened up. Beams of pure, coherent light slashed through the darkness, vaporizing the remaining pirate vessels with surgical precision. It was over in a minute. Aaron slumped against the console, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. "Status?" Vulcan asked. "Hostiles eliminated," the officer reported. "Shields recharging. We are secure." The lights in the Grand Hall returned to normal. Aaron turned around. King Vulcan was standing directly behind him. The massive Volpari ruler looked down at the human. There was no anger in his eyes now. There was only calculation. You fight like a Volpari, Vulcan said. I fight like a father, Aaron corrected, straightening his back. And a mechanic. Sarah ran to him, grabbing his arm. Are you hurt? Just my pride, Aaron said, managing a weak smile. I think I fried the navigation subprocessor. That is going to be expensive to fix. Queen Alara stepped down from the dais. She walked over to Aaron and placed a hand on his shoulder. You saved this ship, she said. You saved my family, twice. She looked at Sarah. I see now why the bond exists. It is not a debt. It is a mirror. Vulcan crossed his arms. The threat is gone. But the question remains, Aaron Cole. You have proven you can fight. You have proven you can think. But can you endure what Aaron asked? The weight of this house, Vulcan said. If you stand beside my daughter, you become a target. Not just for pirates, but for political rivals, for assassins, for those who hate humanity. It is a heavy coat to wear. Aaron looked at Nora, who was safe in the arms of a royal guard, who looked surprisingly happy to be holding her. He looked at Sarah, whose eyes were pleading with him not to stay, but to be sure. I have carried heavy things before, Aaron said. I am not trying to marry a clan king Vulcan. I am not trying to become royalty. I am just trying to make sure she doesn't have to face the dark alone. He took Sarah's hand. And frankly, Aaron added a grin, touching his lips. I think your daughter is the one who has to endure me. I am very stubborn about thermostat settings. King Vulcan stared at him for a long, agonizing second. Then he threw his head back and laughed. It was a booming, thunderous sound that shook the room. Stubborn indeed, Vulcan roared. Very well, human. Very well. He placed a massive hand on Aaron's shoulder, nearly buckling his knees. You have the gratitude of the Night Wind, and you have my blessing to continue this partnership. But be warned, if you break her heart, I will not use a battleship. I will use my teeth. Noted, Aaron said. Sarah let out a breath, leaning her head against Aaron's shoulder. By the stars, Dad. You are dramatic. I am a king, Vulcan shrugged. Drama is in the job description. Later, back on the station, the adrenaline had faded, leaving a comfortable exhaustion. They stood outside Aaron's newly renovated module, which was now technically a penthouse suite, thanks to the Foundation's restructuring of the block. Nora was already asleep inside, clutching a small silver medal the Queen had given her. Sarah leaned against the doorframe. She was still wearing the evening dress, but she had kicked off her shoes. So, she said softly, you met the parents. You fought a space battle. You saved the monarchy. Just a typical Tuesday. Wednesday, Aaron corrected. It's past midnight. My father likes you, Sarah said. He threatened to eat you. That is his highest form of affection. He is terrifying, Aaron admitted. But the Queen is the dangerous one. Oh, absolutely, Sarah agreed. She runs the empire. He just roars at things. She looked down at her hand, then reached out and took his. By Volpari standards, she said, a playful glint in her eyes. Given that you have saved my life, met the patriarch, received the blessing, and my mother gave your offspring a family crest, we are practically engaged already. Aaron choked on air. Whoa, slow down. I thought we were partners. We are, Sarah stepped closer, her tail swaying lazily behind her. But you are wearing my shirt again. Aaron looked down. In the chaos of the battle preparation, he had thrown on a spare flight jacket from the Silver Fang's armory. Technically, Sarah whispered, that makes it a fair exchange. She leaned up and kissed him on the cheek. It was brief, chaste, but it burned like a brand. Good night, Aaron, she said. I will see you at the Foundation meeting tomorrow. Don't be late. We have a food program to launch. She turned and walked down the corridor toward the VIP lifts. Aaron watched her go. He touched his cheek. He looked at the door of his home where his daughter was sleeping safe and sound. He had woken up a week ago as a broken, invisible mechanic. He was going to sleep tonight as the director of a major charity, the savior of a battleship and the practically engaged partner of an alien diplomat. He shook his head, a smile spreading across his face. "Life," Aaron whispered to the empty hallway. "You have a weird sense of humor." He opened the door and went inside. For the first time in a long time, the module didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a starting line. Prometheus 7 had never looked like this. For 20 years, the central plaza of the station had been a transit zone, a gray, echoing cavern of scuffed metal and flickering advertisements, smelling of recycled ozone and tired bodies. It was a place people passed through heads down, counting their credits and their worries. Today, it was a cathedral of light. 6 months had passed since the Battle of the Silver Fang. 6 months since the Cole Foundation had begun rewiring the nervous system of the Ashfall Rim. And today, the plaza was not gray. It was awash in banners of deep indigo and warm terracotta, the colors of the Nightwind clan, woven together with the rust-red hues of the station workers. Aaron Cole stood by the makeshift altar, adjusting the collar of his dress uniform. It was not a new suit. It was his old Terran Engineering Corps dress blues, preserved in a vacuum-sealed bag for 2 decades. He had let the tailor let out the shoulders and take in the waist, but the fabric still carried the weight of history. He tugged at his cuffs. His hands were sweating. He had dismantled live warheads with steadier fingers. "Stop fidgeting," a deep voice rumbled beside him. "You look adequate." Aaron looked up at King Vulcan. The massive Volpari monarch was serving Surreal, as it seemed, as his best man. Vulcan was wearing ceremonial armor that shone like a supernova, his dark fur groomed to perfection. "Adequate?" Aaron asked, raising an eyebrow. "I was aiming for dashing." "Do not overreach, human," Vulcan grunted, though his whiskers twitched in amusement. "You are marrying a Nightwind. Standing upright without fainting is the best you can hope for." The music began. It was not a recording. It was a live orchestra, a chaotic but beautiful blend of Volpari crystal flutes and human string instruments played by the station's music guild people, who 6 months ago had been pawning their instruments to pay for air filters. The crowd rose. It was a sea of faces. There were dockworkers in clean coveralls standing next to Volpari dignitaries in silk robes. There were children from the sector schools running between the legs of royal guards. There were humans, Volpari and a dozen other species, all packed into the plaza, not as factions, but as a community. And then Nora appeared. She was walking down the aisle, tossing flower petals with the enthusiasm of a combat engineer deploying cluster munitions. She wore a dress that was a miniature replica of the Queen's robes, but with sturdy combat boots underneath her own insistence. She was grinning so hard, her eyes were squeezed shut. Behind her came Sarah. Aaron's breath caught in his throat. Sarah Nightwind did not look like a diplomat. She did not look like a princess. She looked like the storm that had brought them together, wild, radiant, and unstoppable. She wore the traditional bridal silk of her people, a shimmering silver fabric that seemed to flow like liquid mercury over her fur. But over her face she wore a simple white veil of human lace. It was a stark, deliberate clash of cultures that somehow created a perfect harmony. Her amber eyes locked onto him through the lace. The bioluminescence in them was pulsing, a soft, steady gold. She reached the altar. King Vulcan stepped back, giving Aaron space to take her hand. "You look," Aaron started, his voice failing him. "Expensive," Sarah whispered, her voice teasing. "Real," Aaron said. "You look real." Sarah squeezed his hand, her claws gently retracting against his palm. The officiant was a startled-looking station chaplain who had been personally briefed by Queen Alara on the hybrid liturgy. He cleared his throat, looking nervously at the king, then at the crowd. "We are gathered here," the chaplain began, his voice amplified across the plaza, "to witness the binding of 2 lives, 2 species, 2 worlds." The vows were spoken in 2 languages. Aaron spoke in High Volpari, a language of growls and melodic hums. He had spent 6 months practicing in secret. "I offer you my shield," Aaron said, the alien words rolling off his tongue with surprising grace. I offer you my silence in the noise. I offer you my home in the void. Sarah spoke in Terran Standard, her voice clear and bell-like. I accept your shield, she replied. I offer you my fire in the cold. I offer you my voice in the dark. I offer you my life, which is already yours. Then came the Vekora. The plaza went silent. This was the part the Vulpari guests had been waiting for, and the part the humans were most curious about. Sarah lifted her veil. She stepped close to Aaron, invading his personal space until they were toe-to-toe. She placed her hands on his chest over his heart. Aaron placed his hands on her waist. They leaned in until their foreheads touched. Breathe, Sarah whispered. Aaron inhaled. He breathed in her scent rain on hot stone ozone and something undeniably wild. He exhaled, and she inhaled his breath. It was an intimate exchange of oxygen, a symbolic sharing of the life force. In the vacuum of space air was the most precious currency. To share it was to say, we survive together, or we die together. For a long moment the world narrowed down to just the sound of their synchronized breathing. Aaron felt the beat of her heart against his palms, rapid and strong. He felt the static charge of her fur against his skin. When they pulled apart, the crowd erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. The dockworkers cheered. The Vulpari howled, a high, joyful sound that echoed off the bulkheads, and Nora was jumping up and down, throwing the remaining flower petals at the king's knees. Aaron retrieved the ring. It was a custom band forged from the same high-density alloy as his old wrench, but lined with platinum. It was designed to sit comfortably below the knuckle of her ring finger, accommodating the claw. Sarah slid a simple band of polished meteorite onto his finger. I pronounce you, the chaplain shouted over the noise. Bonded for life. Husband and wife. Partners in the dark. Aaron pulled Sarah close and kissed her. It wasn't the tentative kiss on the cheek from the hallway. It was deep, claiming, and full of a promise that spanned light years. Finally, Nora yelled into the microphone she had somehow acquired from the chaplain. Can we eat cake now? The reception was less of a royal gala and more of a block party. The Cole Foundation had catered the event, which meant there was real food for everyone. Tables groaned under the weight of roasted synthesis fowl, fresh vegetables from the hydroponic bays, and crates of Vulpari spiced wine. The music had shifted to a fast, rhythmic beat. On the dance floor, humans were trying to teach Vulpari the two-step, while Vulpari was teaching humans how to navigate a tale during a waltz. It was chaotic. It was messy. It was perfect. Aaron stood near the edge of the platform, watching the scene. He held a glass of wine, feeling the vibration of the deck plates under his boots. It is a strange sight, a voice said. Aaron turned. King Vulcan was standing beside him, holding a tankard of ale that looked like a thimble in his massive paw. The king was watching a group of human mechanics, laughing with a squad of royal guards. Strange is good, Aaron said. Strange means change. Prometheus 7 has changed, Vulcan admitted. 6 months ago, these people looked at me with fear. My kind looked at them with disdain. Now, he gestured with the tankard. Now they share bread. They share music. They just needed a reason, Aaron said. People are tired of being angry Vulcan. Hate is heavy. It takes a lot of energy to carry it around. Sometimes you just want to put it down and dance. Vulcan looked down at Aaron. The fierce, predatory glint in his eyes had softened into something resembling respect. You give yourself too little credit, Aaron Cole, the king said. This is not just fatigue. This is leadership. You and my daughter. It is mostly Nora, Aaron deflected, smiling, as he watched his daughter leading a conga line of Vulpari diplomats. She is the real ambassador. No, Vulcan said firmly. It is both of you, a fox who chose to be real and a human who refused to be bought. That is a powerful signal. It resonates on frequencies that politics cannot jam. The king extended his hand. It was a gesture he had not made 6 months ago. "Welcome to the clan's son," Volkan rumbled. Aaron took the massive hand. His grip was firm. "Thank you, sir. Try not to step on anyone on the dance floor. You are heavy." Volkan laughed a sound that shook the nearby tables and strode off, terrifying the bandleader with a request for traditional war drums. The party lasted until the station's night cycle began, when the last guest had staggered home and the cleaning bots had begun their hum across the plaza. Aaron and Sarah retreated to the penthouse module. It was quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the air recyclers, a sound that used to signify poverty to Aaron, but now just sounded like home. Nora had fallen asleep on the shuttle ride back. Aaron had carried her to her room, tucking the duvet around her and the stuffed rabbit. She was still wearing her combat boots. He didn't have the heart to wake her to take them off. He walked into the main living area. Sarah was sitting on the sofa, her legs tucked under her. She had taken off the veil and the heavy ceremonial outer robe, leaving her in the simple silk underdress. She looked exhausted, but content. Aaron sat down beside her. He didn't say anything at first. He just leaned his head back and closed his eyes. "We did it," Sarah whispered. "We did," Aaron agreed. "And nobody died. I count that as a tactical victory." Sarah chuckled softly. She shifted, resting her head on his shoulder. Her tail curled around his leg, a warm, furry weight. "Any regrets?" she asked. The question hung in the air. It was the same question she had asked him the night she offered him the money. "Do you regret saving me?" Aaron opened his eyes. He looked around the room. He saw the datapad on the table loaded with plans for a new school in Sector 12. He saw Nora's drawings, taped to the wall, pictures of foxes and humans holding hands. He felt the warmth of the woman beside him, a woman who could command fleets, but chose to sit on a sofa with a mechanic. "Regrets," Aaron mused. "Only one." Sarah lifted her head, her ears perking up. "What?" "That we didn't meet sooner," Aaron said. "I spent a lot of years being angry at the universe, Sarah. I feel like I wasted time." "You were not wasting time," Sarah said, reaching up to stroke his jawline with her thumb. "You were surviving. You were waiting for the storm." "Well, the storm came," Aaron smiled. "And she drank all my coffee." Sarah laughed, swatting his arm playfully. "I bought you a lifetime supply to replace it." "Speaking of replacements," Aaron said. He sat up and reached for a small box on the table. It was wrapped in simple brown paper. "I have something for you. A wedding gift. I didn't want to give it to you in front of the crowd." Sarah took the box. She looked at him curiously. "You gave me a ring, and you gave me your name." "Open it," Aaron said. Sarah tore the paper. She lifted the lid. Inside lay a shirt. It was the shirt. His old, faded gray service shirt. The one she had worn that first morning. The one that had started everything. But it was different now. Sarah ran her fingers over the fabric. She gasped. The rough gray cotton had been altered. Woven into the collar, the cuffs and the seams were delicate, shimmering threads of silver. It was Volpari, her fur. The strands she shed naturally spun into thread and embroidered into the human garment. It was a masterpiece of integration. The gray and the silver locked together, strengthening the fabric, making it something new. It wasn't just a human shirt anymore. It was a hybrid. "I asked the station weavers to do it," Aaron explained, his voice suddenly shy. "I collected the fur from your brush. It took them a month. It represents us, I guess. Weaving the parts together." Sarah stared at the shirt. Her eyes filled with tears. The bioluminescence flared bright, then softened to a deep, warm honey color. "It is ours now," Aaron said softly. "Like everything else." Sarah hugged the shirt to her chest. She looked at him, and Aaron saw a depth of emotion that no diplomat could ever feign. "It is the most beautiful thing I have ever owned," she whispered. Better than jewels. Better than ships. It is just a shirt, Aaron said, his throat tight. No, Sarah shook her head. It is a flag. It is the flag of our little nation. She leaned over and kissed him. It was a slow, gentle kiss, tasting of wine and promise. I am home, Sarah said against his lips. For the first time since Kethra, I am finally home. Epilogue. Time on a space station is measured in rotations, but legends are measured in generations. 10 years passed, then 20. The Cole Foundation ceased to be a local charity and became a galactic institution. Its logo, a simple wrench crossed with a silver quill, became a symbol of hope in the farthest reaches of the outer rim. It built schools where there were none. It fed colonies that the central government had forgotten. It operated on a single, unbreakable rule. Help because it is right, not because it pays. Nora Cole grew up. She did not become a mechanic, nor did she become a princess. She became a bridge. As the first true cultural liaison between the Terran Alliance and the Volpari Dominion, raised in a dual-species household, she navigated the complex waters of interstellar politics with a terrifying mixture of her father's stubborn pragmatism and her stepmother's diplomatic grace. She was known to disarm hostile negotiations by simply asking everyone to sit down and eat ice cream until they stopped acting like children. And the story of her parents became a legend. In the dockside bars of Prometheus 7 and in the gilded halls of the Silver Spire, they told the tale. They told the story of the veteran dad who caught a falling star. They told the story of the fox princess who tried to buy a hero and ended up marrying him. Young soldiers would ask, is it true he fought off a pirate fleet with a broken shield generator? Young diplomats would ask, is it true she gave up a throne to live in a maintenance module? The answer was always the same. Yes. And they would do it again. The twist, 30 years after the storm. The module was larger now, expanded to encompass the entire upper deck, but the kitchen was still the same. The coffee maker still hissed with a familiar grumpy mechanical rhythm. Aaron Cole sat at the table. His hair was entirely white now, and he moved a little slower, his joints complaining about the station's humidity. But his back was straight, and his eyes were clear. He watched the woman at the counter. Sarah was older too. Her silver fur had softened to a pewter shade, and fine lines etched the corners of her eyes. She was wearing a shirt. It had been patched a dozen times over the years, more silver thread added with every repair, until it shimmered more than it faded. She poured 2 mugs of coffee and brought them to the table. You are staring, Sarah said, setting the mug down. I am admiring, Aaron corrected. He took a sip. It was perfect. You know I was thinking about that first morning, Sarah smiled, sitting opposite him. The morning you threatened me with a wrench. In the morning everyone says I saved you, Aaron said. He looked into his coffee, watching the steam rise. The history books, the news, even Nora, they all say I saved you that night. He looked up at her. But that is not true, is it? Sarah paused. She traced the rim of her mug, her amber eyes warm and wise. No, she said softly. It is not the whole truth. I pulled you out of a ship, Aaron said. But I was dead, Sarah. I was walking around breathing, fixing pipes, but I was dead inside. I died with my wife. I was just a ghost haunting a machine, trying to keep Nora safe until I faded away. He reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was paper thin now, but her grip was still strong. You woke me up, Aaron whispered. You kicked down the door of my tomb and demanded I live. You gave me a purpose bigger than just survival. Sarah squeezed his hand. A tear traced a path through the silver fur on her cheek. We both know the truth, Aaron, she said, her voice trembling slightly. You saved my life. I saved your heart. She looked out the viewport where the stars burned eternal in the velvet dark. And together, she added, we saved more than either of us planned. The end love is the greatest courage. Kindness is the greatest strength. Family is not biology. It is the choice to stand together in the storm. The universe is vast, and greed and war will always prowl the void. But as long as there is a stubborn father, a brave fox, and a child who speaks the truth, the future can always be rewritten.